All right, so today we're diving deep into a world that, many of us might not think about too often. It's the lives of pastors. We see them leading services and offering comfort. But what's it really like behind the scenes, to walk in their shoes?
Right.
That's what we're going to be unpacking today with this episode called A Shepherd After God's Heart. Whether you're deeply religious or not, I think this deep dive might surprise you with just how relevant some of these ideas are for all of us, really.
Yeah. I think one of the most fascinating things here is this central metaphor of pastors as shepherds. And it goes way beyond just a nice image. Think about it. Shepherds are responsible for an entire flock, for their well-being, their protection. That's a heavy burden to carry, especially in today's world.
Yeah, no kidding. And it really makes you realize just how much pressure is on these individuals. And, this episode actually quotes Jeremiah 3.15, where God promises to give shepherds after his own heart. I mean, talk about setting a high bar, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and really unpacking that verse, I think, reveals the core qualities that are expected of a pastor. Deep compassion, wisdom, and a true desire to serve others, not for power or prestige, but really to reflect God's heart in their leadership.
And it's not just about preaching on Sundays, is it?
Right.
Like this episode highlights Acts 20.28, where pastors are entrusted with the spiritual well-being of their entire congregation. Wow, that's like spiritual coach, a counselor, and a community leader all rolled into one.
Yeah.
How do they even find the time?
That's a great question. And it gets to the heart of why this episode calls them unsung heroes. Because think about it. They're often working tirelessly behind the scenes, visiting the sick, offering guidance to those who are struggling, counseling couples, all while navigating their own personal challenges. And sometimes they do all of this without much recognition or appreciation. It's a lot to carry.
It really is.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about all the unseen sacrifices they make. Not just time, but potentially, their own personal space, their own comfort. I mean, this episode quotes, "The task of a shepherd is to give, not to take." That really hits home, doesn't it? This inherent selflessness that's woven into the very fabric of their role.
Absolutely. And it's not just about, material things either. Think about the emotional and mental toll it takes to constantly be on, to be the source of strength and guidance for so many. It's a lot to ask of anyone.
It really is. It's funny because we often talk about, self-care and setting boundaries, but those concepts seem almost impossible for someone in a role where giving is at the core of their identity. It makes you wonder, how do they protect their own well-being while constantly caring for others?
That's a really important question, and one that I think often gets overlooked. It's like we expect pastors to be superhuman, to be immune to the same stresses and struggles that the rest of us face.
Right. And that's where I think this episode's focus on prayer and support becomes so crucial. I mean, if anyone needs a little extra help carrying the weight of the world, it's probably these folks, right?
You're absolutely right. And the episode doesn't just say, pray for your pastor in a vague religious sense. It actually gets into the specifics of what that prayer might look like, focusing on gratitude for their service, asking for strength and wisdom for them, and even acknowledging that they need protection from the unique temptations that they face.
Yeah, speaking of temptation, that's a topic that many people might shy away from. But this episode kind of dives right in. It makes the point that, hey, pastors are human beings too, and they're not immune to the same struggles as anyone else. That's a pretty bold statement, don't you think?
It is, but I think it's an important one. And it connects back to this idea of, unsung heroes we were talking about. By acknowledging their humanity, their struggles, we're also acknowledging that they need support, that they need us to be there for them, not just when they're on the pulpit, but in those moments when they're feeling vulnerable or lost.
Yeah, it's like we're lifting them up, not just in prayer, but with this understanding that they're not, perfect beings. They're people on a journey just like the rest of us.
Precisely. And I think that recognition is key to building a healthier relationship between pastors and their congregations, one where there's more authenticity, more transparency, and ultimately more genuine support on both sides.
Okay, so we've talked about the pastor's role as a modern-day shepherd, their heavy responsibilities, and the importance of recognizing their humanity and offering support. But this episode also connects these ideas back to something very practical, the act of prayer.
Yeah. It's easy to dismiss prayer as something passive, something you do in private. But this episode reframes it as this powerful force, especially for those in leadership positions. Just knowing that people are praying for them can provide a tremendous psychological and emotional boost. It's like a constant reminder that they're not alone in this journey.
Right, and it's not just about, asking for things either. The prayer that's offered in the episode, it's filled with expressions of gratitude, acknowledging the pastor's sacrifices and asking for, strength, wisdom, protection for them. It's almost like sending a message of love and support directly to their heart.
Exactly. It's about aligning ourselves with God's will for their lives
Right.
and interceding on their behalf. And that kind of support can make all the difference, especially when they're facing challenges or feeling overwhelmed.
Okay, so we've established that prayer is a powerful act of support. But this episode also goes beyond the spiritual realm and offers some very practical ways to show your appreciation, like a simple thank you note, acknowledging their hard work, even just offering a listening ear. Those small gestures could go a long way, can't they?
Absolutely. It's about meeting those basic human needs, feeling seen, understood, and appreciated. And pastors need that just as much as anyone else.
Yeah. It's funny. We often think of pastors as these strong, unwavering figures. But this episode really pulls back the curtain and shows us that they're just as human as the rest of us, with the same need for connection, support, and a sense of belonging.
It's a powerful reminder that leadership doesn't mean you have to have it all together all the time. It's about being authentic, relatable, and willing to let others in, to share your struggles and receive the support you need.
I love that. It takes the pressure off everyone and creates a much more authentic and supportive environment. So we've established that pastors need support. But I'm curious, how do we handle those times when they might be facing temptation or making choices that seem out of line with their role? This episode touches on this delicate topic, and I'd love to hear your perspective on it.
Well, I think this is where it gets really interesting. Because it forces us to confront the reality that pastors are human beings, susceptible to the same temptations and struggles as anyone else.
Right.
And, it's easy to judge or criticize from the outside. But this episode encourages a different approach. It suggests that we try to understand, to offer grace, and to remember that none of us are perfect.
It's so important. It's so easy to just jump to conclusions or criticize.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that we don't know the full story. Everyone makes mistakes. And sometimes those mistakes can be, public and painful.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of forgiveness and restoration comes in. It's about creating a culture where people feel safe to admit their shortcomings, seek help, and receive support as they work towards making amends. It's not about condoning wrongdoing, but rather recognizing that everyone makes mistakes. And sometimes those in positions of leadership face even greater scrutiny and pressure.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That reminds me of something we discussed earlier, this idea that God's strength is made perfect in weakness. It's about recognizing that we're all flawed human beings and that our imperfections don't disqualify us from, love, grace, or leadership.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that we're all in this together. And we need to offer each other compassion and understanding, especially when we stumble.
This whole conversation makes me wonder, how do pastors navigate the complexities of the modern world, especially with, social media, changing cultural values, and the constant pressure to be relevant? It's a lot to juggle.
It is. And I think that's one of the reasons why burnout is such a common issue among pastors. They're constantly expected to be on, to have the answers, to be a source of strength and guidance.
Right. It's like they're expected to be these perfect, unwavering figures. But the reality is they're just as human as the rest of us.
And that's okay. In fact, I think recognizing their humanity allows to connect with them on a deeper level and offer them the support that they truly need.
I love that perspective. It takes the pressure off everyone
Yeah.
and creates a more authentic and supportive environment.
Right. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together, pastors and congregations alike. We need each other. And we're stronger when we support each other through life's journey.
This deep dive has already been so insightful, and I feel like we're just scratching the surface. But before we move on, I'm curious about something that was briefly mentioned, this idea of pastors needing protection from temptation. It is a sensitive topic, but the episode brings it up for a reason. And I think it goes back to what we were discussing earlier, recognizing the humanity of those in leadership roles. They're not superhuman, and they face the same temptations and vulnerabilities as anyone else. But why is it especially important to address this when it comes to pastors?
Well, I think about the nature of their role. They often have access to sensitive information. They're in a position of authority, and they might even be handling finances. These factors can create unique vulnerabilities.
It's almost like they're under a microscope, which can make even the smallest slip-up seem magnified.
Exactly. And that's why creating a supportive environment is so important. It's not about expecting them to be perfect, but about offering accountability, guidance, and a safe space to share their struggles.
So it's about creating a safety net, not because we expect them to fall,
Yeah.
but because we want to be there to catch them if they stumble.
Exactly. It's about fostering a culture of transparency and support, where pastors feel comfortable acknowledging their weaknesses and asking for help when they need it.
I think that's a really important message for everyone to hear, not just pastors, but anyone in a position of leadership or authority. We all need support, accountability, and a reminder that it's okay to not be perfect all the time.
Absolutely. And when we create that kind of environment, we empower everyone to be their best selves, to lead with integrity, and to navigate the complexities of life with more grace and resilience.
Okay, so we've talked about the pressure that pastors face, the need for support, and even the potential for temptation. Makes you wonder how they manage to keep going, especially when facing those inevitable moments of burnout, loneliness, and doubt.
It's a great point, and it connects back to something we touched on earlier, this idea that pastors are often expected to be superhuman. We put them on a pedestal, and then we're surprised when they show signs of weakness or struggle.
Right. It's like we forget they have the same human needs as everyone else. To feel appreciated, to have a supportive community, to know that it's okay to not be perfect all the time.
And that's where this concept of standing by them comes in. The episode doesn't go into detail, but it hints at this idea of being there for your pastor, even when they're going through tough times. It's about offering grace, understanding, and a willingness to walk alongside them on their journey.
It makes you realize that leadership isn't about being invincible. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable and to allow others to support you.
Absolutely. And that goes for all of us, not just pastors. We all need people we can lean on, people who will be there for us when we're struggling. It's interesting how this episode actually connects those personal struggles back to 1 Corinthians 9.27, where Paul talks about disciplining himself for the sake of his mission. It's almost like pastors are in this constant spiritual training regimen.
Yeah, it's like they're running a marathon.
Mm-hmm.
But the finish line keeps moving further away. No wonder burnout is such a prevalent issue. But this episode seems to offer a glimmer of hope, right? It suggests that even simple acts of kindness can actually make a real difference.
Exactly. It's not always about, grand gestures or elaborate solutions. Sometimes the most impactful things are the smallest. A heartfelt thank you note, a genuine compliment, a simple acknowledgement of their hard work and dedication.
Yeah, it's about reminding them that they're seen, appreciated, valued for who they are and what they do. And honestly, isn't that something we all crave, regardless of our, profession or position in life?
You hit the nail on the head. We all have that inherent need to feel valued, to know that our efforts matter. And for pastors who often give so much of themselves, those simple acts of appreciation can be incredibly rejuvenating.
Yeah, it's like a breath of fresh air, a reminder that their work isn't going unnoticed. But this episode goes beyond, just offering kind words. It actually dives into the power of prayer as a tangible form of support. It doesn't shy away from addressing those tough questions, like how do we pray for pastors when they might be facing personal struggles or even temptation?
That's where things get really interesting, because it challenges us to move beyond this idealized image of pastors as perfect beings and
Yeah.
to acknowledge their humanity, their vulnerabilities.
Right. It's about recognizing that they're not immune to the same challenges and temptations that the rest of us face.
Exactly. And I think the episode's emphasis on prayer isn't just about, asking for divine intervention or solutions. It's about fostering a deeper connection, a sense of shared humanity, and a recognition that we're all in this together.
Yeah, it's like saying, hey, I see you, I understand your struggles, and I'm here to support you, not just with words, but with my prayers, my thoughts, my intentions.
Beautifully put. It's about creating a space where pastors feel safe to be vulnerable, to acknowledge their weaknesses, and to seek support without fear of judgment.
Because let's face it, the pressure they face is immense. They're expected to be leaders, counselors, spiritual guides, and all-around role models. In today's world, with the added pressures of social media and the ever-changing cultural landscape, it's no wonder so many pastors experience burnout and disillusionment.
It's a lot to carry, and it's why this episode's message of support and understanding feels so crucial. It's about recognizing that pastors are human beings, not superhuman, and that they need our compassion and grace just as much as anyone else.
Okay, so we've talked about the importance of prayer and support, but I'm curious, what about those times when a pastor might be facing temptation? or making choices that seem out of alignment with their role. This episode mentions this briefly, but it's a tricky topic.
It is delicate, but it's important to address. The reality is pastors are human beings, and they're not immune to making mistakes or facing moral dilemmas. The key is to approach these situations with grace and a desire to understand, rather than judge.
That's so important. It's easy to jump to conclusions or criticize, but we have to remember that we don't know the full story. Everyone makes mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes can be, public and painful.
Exactly. And that's where the concept of forgiveness and restoration comes in. It's about creating a culture where people feel safe to admit their shortcomings, seek help, and receive support as they work towards making amends.
That reminds me of something we discussed earlier, this idea that God's strength is made perfect in weakness. It's about recognizing that we're all flawed human beings and that our imperfections don't disqualify us from, love, grace, or leadership.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that we're all in this together, and we need to offer each other compassion and understanding, especially when we stumble.
This deep dive has really challenged me to think differently about the role of pastors and the importance of support and grace. I'm starting to see how these principles can apply to all sorts of relationships and leadership roles.
I'm glad to hear that. I think that's one of the most powerful aspects of this episode. Its ability to spark broader conversations about human connection, empathy, and the challenges of leadership in today's world.
Yeah, it's like the episode has given us a new lens through which to view not just pastors, but all those who serve others in various capacities.
Precisely. It's an invitation to be more mindful of the people around us, to offer support without judgment, and to recognize that we all have a role to play in creating a more compassionate and understanding world.
This has been an incredible conversation. We've explored the depths of pastoral responsibility, the importance of support and understanding, and the enduring power of the shepherd metaphor.
It's been a truly enriching deep dive, and I'm excited to see how our listener applies these insights to their own life and interactions.
Before we wrap things up, I
Yeah.
want to touch on one final point that really resonated with me. The episode emphasizes the importance of pastors being true shepherds. What does that look like in practice, especially in the complexities of the modern world?
That's an excellent question, and one that deserves careful consideration. I think true shepherds are those who lead with integrity, humility, and genuine care for their flock.
So it's about more than just, preaching or performing rituals. It's about embodying those qualities in their daily lives and interactions.
Precisely. It's about being present for people in their joys and sorrows, offering guidance without judgment, and creating a sense of community where everyone feels valued and supported.
I love that. It speaks to this deeper level of authenticity and connection that goes beyond just fulfilling a role or delivering a message.
Exactly. It's about embodying the spirit of the shepherd,
Yeah.
not just performing the actions.
And I think that concept can extend, far beyond just the realm of pastors. We can all strive to be true shepherds in our own ways, whether it's in our families, our communities, or our workplaces.
Absolutely. It's about embracing those qualities of empathy, compassion, and genuine care for others, and letting those qualities guide our actions and interactions.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to the multifaceted nature of leadership and the profound impact we can have on each other when we approach our roles with intentionality and a genuine desire to serve.
I couldn't agree more. It's been an incredibly insightful exploration of what it means to lead, to serve, and to support one another on this journey called life.
We've covered a lot of ground, but I feel like there's still so much more to unpack. What are some key takeaways you'd like our listener to reflect on as we wrap up this deep dive?
That's a great question. I think it's essential to remember that everyone, regardless of their role or position, needs support, encouragement, and a sense of belonging.
Absolutely. And beyond that, I think this episode challenges us to reconsider our preconceived notions about leadership and service. It's not about being perfect or having all the answers. It's about showing up with authenticity, humility, and a genuine desire to make a positive impact.
Beautifully said. It's a reminder that we all have the potential to be true shepherds in our own unique ways, guiding, supporting, and caring for others as we journey through life together.
I love that perspective. It leaves me feeling hopeful and inspired to cultivate those qualities in my own life and interactions.
Me too. I think that's a perfect note to end on. A call to action to embrace empathy, compassion, and the transformative power of human connection.
It's like that saying, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. But what if, instead of hiding or rejecting our weaknesses, We actually embrace them as opportunities for connection and growth.
It's a radical idea, isn't it? To see vulnerability not as something to be ashamed of, but as a source of strength. Because when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, we open ourselves up to receiving support, guidance, even love in ways we might never have imagined.
And isn't that what being a true shepherd is all about? Creating that safe space for others to be vulnerable, to share their struggles, and to know that they're not alone in their journey.
Absolutely. It's about leading with compassion, understanding, and a willingness to walk alongside others, even in their darkest moments.
This entire deep dive has really shifted my perspective. I used to think of leadership as being strong and unwavering, but now I'm starting to see the power of vulnerability,
Yeah.
of acknowledging our limitations and allowing others to support us.
It's a humbling realization, isn't it? And it's something that applies to all of us, not just pastors or those in traditional leadership roles. We all have weaknesses. We all stumble, and we all need support from time to time.
This episode has really challenged me to think differently about how I approach my own relationships, to be more present, more understanding, and more willing to offer support without judgment.
That's the beauty of these deep dives, isn't it? They have a way of sparking those personal reflections and inspiring us to make positive changes in our own lives.
I'm curious, as we wrap up, is there anything else from this episode that really stuck with you? Any key takeaways you'd like to leave our listener with?
I think the most powerful message is this. We're all in this together. Pastors, congregations, leaders, followers, they all need each other. We all need support, encouragement, and a sense of belonging. And when we create spaces where vulnerability is embraced, where grace is extended freely, and where we genuinely care for one another, that's when we truly thrive.
Beautifully said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. A reminder that we all have the potential to be true shepherds in our own unique ways, guiding, supporting, and caring for others as we journey through life together.
Thank you for this insightful conversation. It's been a pleasure to dive deep with you and to explore these thought-provoking ideas.
The pleasure was all mine. And to our listener, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained some valuable insights and feel inspired to embrace those qualities of compassion, understanding, and support in your own life and interactions. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep